Might not mean anything to the people watching or listening, but it's very weird to be doing a podcast at night.
Yeah, I mean, the last one we did was at night.
Morning.
I guess technically it was morning, probably, but yeah, it's
Well, a non-post game pod
okay.
at night.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jalen. It was locker cleanout day. Jalen was busy and didn't talk to us till about 7 p.m. So we're doing this after that.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Yeah, like he said, it was locker cleanout day, so we have a bunch of nuggets from that. We'll talk a little bit about Nick Sirianni. As we record this right now, he is the head coach. So we'll see. We are tempting fate a little bit every time we do a podcast when news might happen, but
there's always emergency podcasts available.
Yeah, and look, like this is now the off season, but we expect news to come, and we'll be ready to talk about it, write about it.
What's the soonest we've ever done an emergency pod after a regularly scheduled pod? Like, we've done 2 in a day.
There have been some where we recorded and then like right after something breaks. I think there was one where we tacked on something at the beginning.
Yeah.
We're like, hey guys, we recorded this podcast and you got to listen to it. Well, you don't have to, but we're not going to change it all. Let's talk about this and then we'll get some.
Sure.
Who knows? Maybe this is not the first part of the podcast anymore by the time people hear it.
Ooh, deep.
All right. We do have a lot to talk about. Jalen Hurts, like you mentioned, spoke for about 14 minutes.
Yeah, 15 minutes. Yep.
We'll get to some other stuff from the locker room, but what stood out about what he said?
For me, he's very accountable. He said repeatedly how he has to get better. He knows that. He understands that. He was asked when he starts preparing for next year. He said, I already have, which I don't know if that's hyperbole or not, but I appreciate the sentiment, and it doesn't surprise me if that's the case. Work ethic's never been an issue with him. He knows he has to get better. He knows he has to be better. He knows that this team isn't going to win a championship if he's not great. And he said the hardest thing about all this is knowing another team's going to win the championship and hoist the Lombardi. And that hurts him. And it was good to hear him say that. And he doesn't show a lot of emotion ever. So that was kind of an honest, not honest. I mean, he's an honest person, but it was kind of more of a heart on your sleeve moment than we usually get from him. It was very, very specific. He usually speaks in generalities. That was a good little specific thing.
I've noticed that. So we talked to him at Locker Cleanout Day last year after the Super Bowl, and now this year. Unfortunately, I couldn't get back. I had to do TV, and I couldn't get back over there in time.
You could have.
I could have. I didn't know that I could have.
Yeah.
I made the choice to not try and then missed it all, but I was listening to it. He does seem to let his guard down on this day.
Yeah.
In particular, a little bit.
Yeah. I don't remember specifically 21 after the first Tampa Bay wild card loss by double digits. But last year was probably his most illuminating presser of the year. I mean, he just played in the Super Bowl a couple of days earlier. But yeah, he was, I tell you what, the interviews all over the place. It's on our site, so check it out. I thought he was pretty interesting. He was thoughtful and said some interesting stuff. What was your biggest takeaway?
Well, I had a couple. He was asked again if he wants Nick back, which, look, I think it's a fair question to ask again because he didn't answer it
right
after the game. And he, to be honest, he didn't really fully give a glowing endorsement this time either. So this is what he said. He said, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know it was a thing, so I don't see why that wouldn't be the case. We plan on fixing everything that we've done and growing together. Coach Sirianni, Brian, everyone. Sure. And maybe he's being truthful that like he doesn't even understand why we're questioning if Nick Sirianni should be the head coach. But also, I think it's pretty obvious that that's out there. And I don't know, if you really believe in the head coach, your words carry some weight.
Yeah.
I don't know. You have the opportunity to really say, yes, he's the guy I want here. He can fix this.
If it was anyone else, I would really wonder, like, wow, he doesn't like the coach or whatever. But with him, he's just so hard to read sometimes, and
It's
you,
fair.
you, you don't really know what he's trying to convey and why. He doesn't like to. I think he doesn't like to admit that he knows what fans and media are saying. He likes to. He wants people to think he's in his bubble and he doesn't know anything that's going on. He doesn't pay attention. I'm guessing that's why he answered that way. But you're right. I mean, he could, and I thought he'd be prepped to answer that question differently.
He gave a little bit more this
A
time.
little bit. He eventually got to it. It took him a minute.
I guess if the Eagles fire the coach and he's on record very dramatically vouching for the coach, maybe that would be bad.
Possibly. Yeah. I mean, if he knows if Jeff Lurie told him that he's going to fire Nick and he knows that, where's his motivation to answer that way? That's maybe he thinks it would compromise his relationship with the next guy. I have no idea. It's probably a mistake to try to understand why Jalen says certain things that he says, but I'm with you that he could have really gone a long way to ending a lot of speculation just with, I think the world of coach, he's helped my game in every way. I don't see any reason he wouldn't be here next year. He should be. He's my coach. I don't know, whatever he would say. But he didn't. He chose not to. And then when he did give him an endorsement, it was kind of wrapped up with Brian Johnson and who else?
Everyone.
But he said three names. Was it Brian, Nick? Did he say Howie or something? Or
Later on he did mention Howie. Yeah.
Sorry.
Give me that pen.
It's hard to
confiscating the pen.
It's hard to. It's hard. To, yeah. It's hard sometimes to understand exactly what his motivation is.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
And if you just missed what happened, I confiscated the pen that Rube was clicking.
Once. I clicked it once because clicked once. But I have a problem.
I know.
I do. I have a problem.
I'm well aware. Anything else from Jalen that really stood out to you?
No.
I have one more. So he
wouldn't talk about his injuries. He just didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah, he said obviously he was dealing with the finger, but he said everything else was okay, which was a valid question because he didn't look quite like himself, especially running.
Yeah.
He had that knee injury earlier in the year, and we think it healed, but he also didn't look right.
Right.
So that was a fair question. I thought him talking about his personality was interesting, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, but he basically said all these things that supposedly made me a great leader are now negatives. So it seemed like a little frustration with that. His stoicism, his lack of emotion, which is true. Like I think all those things were praised to a certain extent when they were winning, and then now that they're losing, it's you're trying to figure out what's going wrong.
Yeah.
And he's a leader, and he's not. But I also think that sometimes, not that he should change who he is as a person, but I think certain situations call for different things.
Yeah, that's a tricky one because you're right. You don't want someone to try to be someone they're not because it's not going to ring true and the message won't get through. You'd like to see him. And his teammates say they've seen him fired up in the locker room and before games and halftime. And he does get fiery, which is hard for me to picture. But they say he does. You see it a little bit on some of those.
Here and there.
Like some of the videos,
Mic'd
the Eagles, the mic'd up or the post-game videos. I just think that you need to be who you are. And
it was him admitting that he knows what people are saying about him now.
It's true.
Which is something he doesn't like to do.
Yeah.
But I think that one really probably irks him because it's about his personality.
Yeah.
And I understand why he would be frustrated that, and I don't necessarily think the criticism is unwarranted, but I understand why he would feel a certain type of way about it.
Sure. Isn't it crazy he's going to his 5th season?
It's unbelievable. Sometimes I think about that with all these guys. Like Jack Driscoll's about to be a free agent. How'd that happen?
4 years in the league.
Yeah. I know how it happened.
Oh, okay.
I just can't believe it.
How it happened. Yeah. Yeah, that is crazy. Anyway. Are we
Anything
talking?
else on Jalen?
Oh, I thought you wanted to talk about Jack Driscoll's free agency. Like
We'll
what
have
teams might be.
plenty of episodes to talk to dedicate to Jack Driscoll's pending free agency.
No, nothing else on Jalen. Uh, I I thought he was more forthcoming than usual. Maybe just something about the season being over. He lets his guard down just a little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit more.
Yeah, it's funny because you've covered a lot of locker room cleanout days, and basically 31 teams are not thrilled. Some teams are happy because they did better than they thought they would do, but for the most part, like, it's not a happy day, but it's also not like a really sad day either, because that's just not human to be, especially 2 days after a loss, to just be like down in the dumps.
Yeah.
It's not a Morgan there.
No, and I think guys are more. They're more disappointed or sad that they're not going to see their teammates.
Mm-hmm.
For some of them, they'll never be their teammates again, and others they won't see till OTAs.
Do you do that when you're looking around the locker room on cleanout day and you're like, I'll never see that guy again?
Yeah. Yes, I did that with some media members today, but it's another story. But yeah, it's hard. I mean, anytime you're part of a group and whatever it is, sports or work or book club, if you know it's the last time you'll be around those people, that's sad. Unless you don't like them, and then you're happy.
There might have been some of that, too.
Usually the case with me. People are glad when I leave, but. Yeah, it's a weird dynamic. I'll never forget locker cleanout day after the Super Bowl in 2017, the one they won. I guess people know that they won it that year, but it was surreal. I mean, they had remember they had that table with football. There was like 50 footballs,
Mm-hmm.
specially made, custom football. I have the photo in here, and every player on the team was signing every one, and it was I don't think it was until then that it kind of really hit me just what had just happened. But yeah,
It took footballs on a table.
yeah. I mean, I knew they won the game. I knew they won the Super Bowl. I knew they were champions. But
I'm just thinking about all the things that happened before.
No, but what I mean is like the whole thing. It was like all the pregame stuff. It was crazy. There's thousands of media and everything. It's so crazy. And then post game, there's 1 million people around. It's total bedlam and chaos. And the next thing you know, you're in the locker room with just the players and 20 media. And I don't know. It just became more human, I think, that day. And you just saw what it meant to the players. Yeah, I don't know.
There were not 50 footballs in the middle of the locker room today.
No, they were not.
A few players talked about Nick Sirianni a little bit. Presumably his future still hangs in the balance. We know he was supposed to meet with Jeff Lurie on Wednesday, go over a plan, see if they're aligned. Fletcher Cox very strongly supported Nick Sirianni. So did Jason Kelsey, Jordan Mailata. Let me ask you this. How much does that stuff matter?
I don't think what they say to us matters as much as the conversations they have with Mr. Lurie, Jeff Lurie, which I assume.
If they mirror what they're saying to us.
I think it does make a difference. I do. Jeff Lurie's relationship with all those guys, and really specifically, I think Kelsey, BG, and Fletch, and possibly Lane as well. But I think Jeff Lurie really. I mean, it's rare to have 4 guys. I think it's unprecedented to have 4 guys. I looked it up once. Together that long, who had never been with another team, and I think Jeff Lurie understands how special it is and what they mean to the franchise. And I don't think he would make a major decision without talking to all those guys or most of them. And I do think their voice carries a lot of weight with him. They represent this franchise as much as anybody. I mean, they've been here. I mean, Lane got here the year after Andy Reid, but I mean, Kelsey, BG, and Fletch play for Andy Reid. I mean, that's how long they've been here. BG was telling some story, and he was like, "Yeah, remember that game Kevin Cobb started?" I'm like, "You were here with Kevin Cobb?" and then I was like doing the math. I was like, "BG, if somebody was in 3rd grade when you got here, they'd be a junior in college now." It's like these guys have personified this franchise for over a decade. So. They had a huge role in Jeff Lurie winning that Lombardi. I think their words mean a lot to him.
I think it matters. I don't think it would ever be like a determining factor. I think you have to be really careful if your ownership, if you're listening too closely to your players about this, because I think Nick is a nice guy, and I
Right.
think they like him,
Right.
and I think sometimes you conflate just liking someone as a person with the job they can do.
Yeah, and I think Jeff's shrewd enough to separate the two, and really ask pointed questions of those guys. I mean, he knows they all like him personally, but
Which matters too, by the way.
it does not as much as the other stuff. But yeah,
We both agree that Jalen's words, whatever they are to him, is probably different than what they are to us.
I
But
hope so.
yeah, you would think so. I think we'd both agree that matters more than even Kelsey or Fletcher.
Yeah, well, because he's going to be
He's
here.
going to be here, yeah.
So yeah, I think that's true. Imagine if Jeff Lurie sat down with Jalen and asked him about Nick, and he's like, "Well, I hope everyone's back. I hope you're back. I hope Howie's back. You're not going anywhere, Mr. Lurie, are you? You selling?" I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that convo, but yeah, it's a fascinating dynamic, and I'm really interested to see what happens over these next. You would think next 48 hours.
Yeah, the way the last coaching tenure ended, you would think if they are going to make a move, they would do it with, a little more swiftness.
Alacrity.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good word. Last time it was kind of a mess.
Yeah.
And they're already a little behind if they were going to make a change. There's 7 vacancies right now, and those teams are already interviewing candidates. They're ahead of the curve. The Eagles were behind it last time. And look, it worked out. They got a coach that took them to the Super Bowl. But if they're going to do it, you don't want to wait too long.
I also feel like, man, I think that was also messy because at first we thought Doug was coming back, and so they were kind of a little behind the 8 ball. But also remember, gosh, I think it was in 2015, Lurie admitting in his press conference when he fired Chip, and I remember asking him the question. He admitted he had already talked to potential candidates before he fired Chip. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Lurie has reached out to representatives of some of the candidates he's interested in.
This news coming out as we're doing this, Mike McCarthy back in Dallas. That was kind of the other one. Similar situation. Team that didn't live up to expectations, still a playoff team. McCarthy is back.
Interesting. That's good news for the Eagles fans.
I think so.
Although, I mean, they're what a great regular season team. First team ever to win 12 games 3 straight years, 12 or more games 3 straight years, and never make it to the NFC or AFC championship game.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's going back.
I am too. Interesting. So that takes one candidate off the market.
Well, it does eliminate one potential very attractive opening.
Yeah, very.
How attractive do you think the Eagles' job would be if it becomes available?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, it's a. I don't know if it helps that Jeff Lurie keeps firing people that went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's a good roster. It looks like you have a quarterback.
Yeah, it's a good market. I mean, you can, it's a good market to be in.
Do you also think that given, like, if they were to fire Nick, this is a very different situation than the last couple of times? Really, every time.
Sure.
It wouldn't be a complete rebuild.
Oh, I totally agree.
Nick is, or Jeff,
because you'd bring Matt Patricia back.
Jeff has not really been in this spot before.
Yeah, I mean, the last time they fired a coach after a winning season was what, Buddy in 90? I think.
Okay.
Yeah, right? I mean, they've usually been, 4-win teams.
Mm-hmm.
So from that standpoint, I think it's pretty attractive.
It's attractive. Do you think it would also, I've been thinking about this, would the Eagles be interested in a different type of candidate?
It's a great question. I was wondering that too, because the last 4 head coaches he's hired have been first-time head coaches.
You kind of want them to grow with it. And
offensive
especially
coaches.
the last 2 especially, I think there were guys that no one else was interested in. And I think that they kind of saw that, not that they can, I don't know the right word. I want to say they can control them, but like, coach is happy to have the job.
Yeah, and Andy was the same way when they hired him
Sure.
in '99. Nobody had heard
Chip
of
was
him.
a little different because he was like a big fish at
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah, he was different. But he was still a first-time NFL head coach and an offensive guy. I mean, the last defensive coach he hired was Ray Rhodes.
Yeah.
And, he said he'll never hire a defensive coach. So some of the top candidates are defensive guys, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think, but I really do think if there's a change, like, why would Mike Vrabel not be an interesting candidate?
Yeah, that's one of the defensive guys.
Yeah.
I mean, although Eagles won more games than the Titans each of the last 2 years, but he's a really good coach.
Yeah, but if we're basing on wins and losses, Nick isn't going
He's
either.
not getting fired. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating thing. I can't wait to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I guess the longer we don't know, more likely he's back.
I don't know. I think at a certain point that'll be true.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not till the end of the week.
Okay.
I'd say if nothing happens by the close of business Friday, what's today? Wednesday?
Wednesday, as we record this at 7:55 p.m.
I don't think it really means anything yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
We know Nick is doing the exit interviews, so he's still a part of the building.
Yep.
I saw Kevin Patullo today.
We saw Sean Desai.
I did not see Sean Desai.
Oh yeah, you were. Yeah, after Jalen's presser, we were all leaving the building, and he was walking out.
He's still here.
He was thanking us. He's such a nice guy.
Very nice guy.
Yeah, he was.
At a certain point, like, go home, Sean. Be with your family. What are you doing? You're not going to be back
He said
here.
he was working on his resume. So he said, he wanted to use the printer before he left. No, he thanked us. He said he appreciated us and went out the door with his briefcase.
Did you ask him for an interview?
I didn't.
Okay.
I'll just leave him alone.
Yeah.
I think Zach Berman he looked at him and he was like looking around and he saw him walking out.
Yeah.
I think he wanted to, but at some point you're like,
It's also like 15 degrees outside.
I think it's like 11 right now.
It'd be really tough to do an interview outside right now.
And he was in the hallway still, but he was walking toward the door. And at a certain point, it's just, you know what, leave him alone. You'll probably see him at the Senior Bowl. Are you going to the Senior Bowl?
I don't know. I haven't decided that.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
It might be worth it.
Now I'm thinking maybe I should go.
He'll be there.
Probably. Have you ever been to the Senior Bowl and just to see, like, it is a weird thing. All coaches without jobs are just, like, trying to talk to people because they know everyone in the NFL's there.
A lot of networking.
Yeah. Sometimes you feel bad for them.
Yeah.
But it's like, it is a good, like, everyone's there.
Yeah.
So you can just go talk to people. Try to get a job.
Isn't that how we found out, like some of Doug's coaches?
It was just Chris Wilson. They needed to hire a defensive line coach.
And you saw him with an Eagles credential.
Yeah, and I'm trying to like read it. But at that point, I didn't really know any of the coaching staff. So, maybe he said, I don't know who he is.
Because I remember sitting there like looking him up and learning what we could. Anyway.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break, and then we have a bunch of other stuff from Locker Room Cleanout Day that we learned.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table. All right, we're in that locker room for a long time today.
4 hours?
A long time today. Talked to a bunch of different players.
5 hours?
Found out a bunch of stuff. So we're just going to go back and forth because Reuben and I were that's the nice thing about covering the beat with someone else is I don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to be everywhere. We can kind of split up the responsibilities. So we were not in the same places.
I thought the best thing about working with someone else covering a beat is that you do most of the stuff. I just kind of sit back and let you do all the work.
That's not true.
All right. Anyway.
All right. I will start with something that was very strange in the moment, but now it's starting to make sense. Jordan Davis was talking about Fletcher Cox like he's already gone. A few lockers over, Fletcher had completely cleared out his locker, which is rare. Like he's been here for a decade, over a decade.
12 years.
He talked about his future a little bit and seemed open to anything, but then hearing Jordan Davis talk, I no longer think Fletcher Cox will be back here.
What did he say?
Jordan?
Paraphrasing,
just basically that Fletch isn't going to be around to be their security blanket anymore. He talked about him and Jalen Carter kind of stepping up to lead the defensive line room. And he mentioned just how much Fletcher meant to him. And he said, like, he even said, like, even though he's not going to be here anymore, I can still call him. I'll still have a relationship with him. But he was speaking in pretty definitive terms that Fletcher was not going to be here, which walking into the locker room, I thought there was a chance Fletcher would be back.
Yeah, I thought it was better than 50% chance. And it still might. I mean, they've cut him and brought him back. So nothing would surprise me. It could be that Howie told him, because I think BG's the guy that give you a hometown discount. BG just wants to be here, play that 15th year. I think Fletcher, and I don't blame him because he's played at such a high level. I think he's a top 10 defensive tackle in the NFL. Based on all the, analytics and stats, he's a top 10 interior lineman or close to it. And he wants to get paid market value for.
Yeah, if he's going to keep playing.
Yeah, and I don't blame him.
Which I also don't know if that's definite either.
Right. So it could be that he's just decided 12 years is a good career, and he's got so many other interests. 2,000 cattle in his backyard. He's got a small backyard. He's got this ranch.
He lives in the city, right?
That's right. I think he's actually in Haddonfield. He's got a ranch in Haddonfield. But no, he's in Texas and
Shady Trail Ranch, is that the name of it?
Yeah. Shady Trail, and he's interested in so many things, and
he can still play though.
He can still play at a pretty high level. He was He might have been their defensive MVP. Probably was.
Certainly the most consistent on that line.
Yeah.
There were other guys with higher peaks, but lower valleys for sure.
Yeah, and you just mentioned two of them, Jalen and Jordan. The first 6 weeks of the year, they were like all pros. But it could be that Howie said, "Look, I can't afford you next year. I just can't." And Howie's talked about not letting emotions and relationships, lead him to decisions that aren't sound from a football standpoint. So we'll see. I was really impressed with Fletcher's leadership this year.
The last few years, I think.
Yeah, I thought he really just took it to another level this year, especially when things were going bad here at the end. But we talk about Kelsey and everything. I mean, Fletch he's a 6-time Pro Bowler, and he's
one of the greatest players in franchise history.
No question about it.
And he's been overshadowed a little bit.
Yeah, and I think you made the comparison with Jason Peters with him, just like he's not that Pro Bowl guy anymore, but like it's a mistake to think he's not that good. I mean, he's still good. He's just not quite that good. JP was like that for a few years. He just wasn't. It's just such a high standard that he'd set. Fletcher's still really good, and yeah. But yeah, who are the best defensive linemen in Eagles history? Obviously, Reggie White and Clyde Simmons.
Jerome, I know it was a short career
for a few years. I think Fletcher at his best was as good as Jerome, maybe a little better.
Some other edges, Trent Cole.
Yeah. Hugh for a few years. It was just a few great years. William Fuller, but to do it 12 years at that level puts him in pretty elite. I mean, I think Reggie was only here seven years before Brayman ran him out of town. So he's definitely in that Mount Rushmore of Eagles defensive linemen. And maybe there's some guys from I can't even say it, from like the 50s and 60s. I'm sure there are. Go ahead. But yeah, he'll be missed I would say he'll be missed as much as Kelsey, but awfully close.
Yeah,
and those young defensive linemen, I mean, they revere him.
Oh yeah.
The same way the young offensive
Jordan
lineman.
Davis had to like control, like stop himself a little bit just from getting emotional about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Losing Fletch and Jason Kelsey is, I mean, huge in so many ways, if that does indeed happen.
Yeah. And it does create a little bit of a leadership void, and you got to figure out who's exactly filling that.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah. All right, who do you got, or what do you got?
Well, I'll talk about Kelsey real quick. He started, it was like 50 people surrounding him, and he started, I said, look, I'm not taking any retirement questions. Anything else is fair game. Not talking about that. I'll address that in the future. But if you want to talk about the game, if you want to talk about the season, you want to talk about anything like that, fire away. And he went on and on and on about the season, about blitz pickup, about Jalen, about Nick. And gradually, after like half an hour of this, people started peeling off, and the group got smaller and smaller. And then I don't know, I was over there, and he started talking about his future a little bit, and he did allow how he sees retirement, but without putting like a time frame, like I'm retiring now. But he is, and I mean, he was also asked, whatever you've decided about retiring, is there any chance you would change your mind? And he said, I'm not talking about that. But he did say,
I like that effort.
I know, it was good. What I found really interesting, though, was he said he wants to be involved in football in some way. He said he loves the game so much, and he still has this real desire to learn more about it. He said, I want to learn. And obviously, if he's going to be a broadcaster, he'll have to do that, which I think he'd be
Seems like a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, if he wants to. It's not an easy job. I mean, those guys are on the road. I'm not sure he wants to do that, but I think he will at some point. But he said he wants to learn more about route trees. He said, I want to learn more about defense. He said, I want to learn why we fell apart at the end of the year. He said, I just want to keep learning about football. He said, this game has meant too much to me my whole life he said, yeah, I have other interests. And he said, I always have, but, and I'll have time to explore them, but I really want to learn. I just never want to stop learning about football. I thought that was really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can do that without being a coach and working your life away.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I can't see him ever being a coach.
I don't see that either.
Yeah.
I think he'd be a heck of a coach.
I do too. Yeah. I'll tell you what, though. I mean, I'd bring him in for training camp or something if he had interest in that.
In a few years.
Yeah, maybe in 2 years. I think next training camp he's going to be far, far away from the NovaCare Complex.
Well, he should be.
He might stop by one day.
It's like when the freshmen in college stops by to see their old teachers.
Yeah. Yeah, and then by sophomore year, you don't remember their names. That's really sad.
That is sad.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go with the next one. I'll keep it with Jordan Davis because he did talk about himself because there was a clear drop-off, and he admitted. He said, I'm a man. I can admit I fell off in the second half of the year. And we said, well, what happened? And he basically said, like, the nicks and bruises, the wear and tear on the body that he experienced, he wasn't ready to deal with it and to play through it the way he needed to. And he said it's on him to learn how to do that better. And not that he wasn't taking care of his body seriously, but he said there's another level to it that he has to get to. So I thought it was a pretty honest moment for him, and it was clear. Like, he clearly was a different player.
Yeah.
In the second half of the year, he mentioned his body was beat at the end of this year, which is a little scary because
he didn't play that many snaps.
He played a lot more than he did last year, but this is the number of snaps.
300 less than Fletcher.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like the number of snaps he played this year is about what you need him to play every year. So, at least. So he's got to figure out how to get his body to the point and to maintain it through a whole season. He couldn't do that this year.
Yeah. Yeah, at least he's accountable and he understands what he has to do, but it is a little...
Yeah, and Nick Sirianni's talked about, like, how much he wants to please everyone, and that he takes his stuff to heart, but you gotta actually do it.
Yeah.
And he didn't do it this year, not well enough.
Yeah. It's good to hear, but it's concerning to hear as well.
Yeah, a little bit of both, I think.
Yeah.
You got to realize there's an issue, but a guy who's 340 pounds, it's not an easy thing to maintain your body like that.
Right. I had a long talk with N'Kobe, had a really good chat with him. He's doing well with his rehab. His boot's coming off in 3 weeks. He said he was never healthy, even when he came back from the first injury, which he suffered opening day on his right foot. He said he didn't really feel right because he missed 5 weeks, 4 weeks, I think. He said he didn't feel right until the Dallas game. He said, "Man, I feel great." He said he thought he was playing his best football, and then he got hurt in that game. His left foot, the Liz Frank, much more serious injury. He said he never missed a practice in high school or college. He said it's just been a really hard mentally. He said physically, the rehab's hard, but mentally, it was funny. He said, I'm like sitting there like counting down how many days till OTAs and training camp, and like my team's still playing. It's
Yeah.
like the season's not even over, and I'm like looking forward to next year. But he said he said there's no doubt in his mind he can be a really high level every down linebacker. Stay healthy. He said there's no reason. They actually think, he said there's a possibility the first injury, like, you have compensatory injuries with they could have been related. They actually are looking into videos of how he runs and moves in games to kind of assess
Oh,
whether
interesting.
his injuries were related to that. And he said there's ways you can kind of work on just the steps he's taken. Was it coincidence, or did something lead to it? Which is,
I'd be fascinated by the results to that
yeah,
study.
yeah. I asked him to send me his workup. But he's a really serious kid. He wants to be great. He's really confident. He believes in himself. He's aware that there's people out there that have already decided he can't play. He gets that. He understands it. He says, that it doesn't. It just makes me stronger. He said I don't, whether someone's praising me or criticizing me, I'm just going to keep doing my thing and working hard. And I understand that comes with the job. Really confident kid. So look, I don't know what level he can get to, but I know they sure need him next year because.
Yeah, but the problem is I don't know if you can rely on him.
No, I don't know either. He did say he'll be he expects to be cleared by OTAs.
Okay. Yeah, I don't necessarily
No,
mean
I know you didn't mean
yeah.
that, but you're right. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, they felt like they put all their eggs in the Nakobe basket this year, and he got hurt, but
Yeah.
it didn't work out.
No, it didn't. He was not playing well. He said he didn't, when he did come back after the layoff. He said he just didn't feel like himself yet. But I don't know. I don't know if he can play. But the only linebackers they have under contract are him and Ben Van Sumeren, so he better be able to play.
Yeah. Well, they better be able to find some linebackers.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't think? No, never mind. I don't want to go there. But it was good. It was good conversation, and certainly going to be one of the big storylines going into training camp.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll give you another one along the same lines. Talked to Sidney Brown today. Tore his ACL in that Week 18 game. Has not had surgery yet. Surgery scheduled for next week. He very positive kid.
Yeah.
Super eager to just. He's already been rehabbing, which he can't do a lot yet. He's walking around, but eager to finally get the surgery and then
Sure.
attack the rehab from there. He said there was a moment like right after, his first phone call was to his twin brother Chase. They had a good cry on the phone, he said, but after that he's been kind of positive and he's excited to rehab. He told me his goal is to be ready for training camp, which
It's not going to happen.
yeah, I mean it's nice to have goals, but if we're realistic about this, probably not going to happen. He also said he wants to be ready for the opener, which unlikely as well.
Outside chance.
Outside chance. So you're talking.
I mean, a lot of it was there other damage in there? Was there, if it's a clean ACL, maybe?
Yeah, but even then, it's a stretch.
reach. Yeah.
So we'll see. But I liked his attitude about it. It's a shame for him because I don't think, like, kind of similar to Nakobe in a way, they can't count on him to be a starter next year. So you have Reed, and they're probably gonna have to bring in another starter.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think something like week 4 or week 5 is probably realistic. But then you have a guy.
You could see him starting on the pup.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, then they have a guy who hasn't, just coming off an injury, hasn't had training camp. Great kid and fun to talk to. You saw his potential. I mean, I think he was getting better as the year went on. Obviously, he knows he's got to tackle better. He's got to, he's got to work on that.
I think they screwed up by not playing him early in
I
the
do
year.
too. He should have been getting reps so that when he, by the time he did start playing, he would have been that far ahead. But you had to get Terrell Edmonds out there and Justin Evans.
Justin Evans still has a locker.
Was
He was on
I
IR.
saw that. I was like, what's he? Was that like 3 years ago? It was this year.
There are some names on this team in like 5 years going to be like, that guy was on this team?
Jalen. No. I mean, Sidney showed us what he, I mean, that pick six was such a, I mean, he's not the world's fastest guy, but I mean, that
He was pretty fast.
he looked, yeah, he was
It was
pretty,
almost 20 miles an hour on that.
Was
run
he?
back. It was, I think, the 13th fastest time. Or
Really?
Yeah, it was very fast this year.
Yeah. I mean, I like his game. I can't wait to see the player he becomes in a couple of years. I'll give you a quick one.
Mm-hmm.
Tanner McKee is going to start taking piano lessons.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, that's all.
Oh,
So we were talking about, I gave him some tips, some advice.
someone else told me they wanted to start playing piano. Was it Jordan Davis?
Oh, yeah. Tanner said Jordan started. Yeah,
Mhm.
he started lessons. And Tanner said his sister and his mother both played piano. So they always had a piano. There was always piano music around the house, which is great. And he just never started to learn. But he said, I have, doesn't have to get ready for the combine or anything. He's got some free time, and he was looking for a hobby.
He should be studying the playbook.
Yeah, that's right. Might have to play.
By the way, Sidney Brown on that pick six, 21.52 miles per hour.
Wow.
The 14th fastest ball carrier speed in the NFL this year per Next Gen Stats.
Well, I apologize.
The problem with it, the number 2 time in the NFL this year, Chase Brown, 22:05.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's funny. His brother's a running back,
Yes.
Bengals. But yeah, that's it on Tanner.
Okay. I talked to DeAndre Swift
Yeah.
a little bit. Felt like he proved something to the league this
Sure.
year, even though that wasn't his goal. But he showed he could stay healthy. He showed he can shoulder the load.
It's not always a load around here.
Yeah, that's true. But he had a couple of games where he carried the ball 20-plus times. So it was something he never really did at all in Detroit. He was always a part of a pretty heavy rotation. Said he really definitely enjoyed playing here in Philly. Does not know what's going to happen.
He's free agent.
He's a free agent, pending free agent. And this is he did say like he's excited to test the market for the first time in his career. But he also was asked about, but you saw what happened with running backs last year. And he said, that kind of hurt just as a player at that position to watch everyone except for, he didn't say this, I'm saying this, Miles Sanders get paid. Interested to see what his market holds.
I think there's a chance he'll be back just because I could see him like hitting free agency and just not getting the offers that he's hoping for, and Howie throwing a few million over 1 year at him, and
Maybe.
I take him back. I think you can get more out of him.
I do too. I think they underutilized him.
I do too.
You look at like some players with juice on the offense when the offense was stagnant.
Yeah.
Man, find a way to get that guy the ball.
Got to find ways. Like, it's not just about, Kenny Gainwell's the only running back under contract.
Yeah, that's right. Boston Scott's a free agent.
Yeah.
Rashad Penny's a free agent.
Yeah. His Eagles career was something else.
I thought he was going to have a bigger role.
Oh, yeah, me too. I mean, how many stories did we write in training camp about the running back rotation? And they didn't do anything to dissuade us.
No?
And then he just rotted on the bench. I talked to Britton Covey. He's going to have surgery as well on his left knee. He said he's had an injury dating back before training camp. And he played all year with it. He said he had the option to get it scoped, but he didn't want to miss any games. He said, I think I could still play with it. He said it bothered him more at practice than in games, because he said once you're in the game, the adrenaline's going. But in practice, he said it did bother him. So he's going to get that scoped in the in the next couple weeks. And obviously, I mean, I think it's interesting because he played at such a high level with this injury, and he'll be fine. A scope, he'll be able to work out 2 weeks later or a week later. Third highest average in Eagles history, behind Westbrook in 2002 and Deshaun in 2009, I believe, and third highest in the league this year, highest in the NFC.
He was very good all year.
He was really, really good.
Good. It's a good lesson that sometimes guys do get better.
You're right. Yeah, he showed a couple of flashes last year, but this year he was terrific and led the NFC in punt return yardage. So, yeah.
Slay, talked to him a little bit. He had a back injury that he needed to get carted off the field. He actually said he avoided a major injury, which is good news because when you saw him get carted off, you thought,
yeah,
man, what's this going to mean for next year?
Sure.
He said within about 3 weeks he'll be okay. We asked him what the injury was specifically. He said, man, I don't know. They told me, but I don't understand it.
He's hilarious.
It was so funny. And he said he desperately wanted to walk off the field on his own because he's in a group chat with a few of his old teammates, and he knew they would call him out for getting carted off the field, and he said they already have.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but that's good news because, look, I know he's aging, and he's not the player he once was, but they're going to need him. You can't replace both starting corners, so...
You're saying Bradbury won't be back?
Yeah. I think they're going to have to just eat that contract, and it's going to suck because it's a lot.
Yep.
But, yeah, I just don't think he can play anymore.
Can't play.
And the other thing, Slay got into the defense a little bit and just how tricky it was switching coordinator. Like, I think everyone knew that all year, but a lot of players were guarded about it because they didn't want to criticize.
Not Hassan Reddick.
Yeah.
He was the one guy who was, look, it was really, really hard.
Yeah.
That's why guys are out of position. They got all this terminology floating around their heads.
And Slay kind of talked about just like how philosophically Patricia and Desai are so different. He likened it to like a marriage and being married to two women at the same time who want different things, which is a really funny thing to say.
That sounds
but
like Slay.
You can kind of follow the logic a little bit. And when we look back at this season, I think that's what we're all going to remember is, remember when they made Matt Patricia the defensive coordinator in week 10 for some reason and the defense completely collapsed?
Yeah, I think, and people are always asking me what happened. I think that might be top of the list.
It's up there.
Top of the list for me.
It's not just about the on-field collapse.
Sure.
It's about the panic button being pushed.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it was so late in the year. And it was just, at that point, it was really just the Niners and Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
You think about this. This team beat more playoff teams than any other team with Sean Desai as the D coordinator. Miami, Dallas. I mean, you go right down the list. Buffalo, the Rams.
The Bucks.
They did beat the Bucks. They were a playoff team. And one other that I'm forgetting right now. Not the Vikings, Patriots.
I wasn't listening closely.
I don't blame you. But in any case, the Ravens and the Eagles are the only teams to beat 6 playoff teams. And the Ravens are 6-3, Eagles are 6-2. And that was all Sean Desai. And shut down a lot of those teams. Slay is hilarious. I asked Slay the other day, 2 weeks ago or so, like, when you hear him interviewed, like you can hear him all over the locker room. He's hilarious, like very naturally funny. Even just his delivery is like he's like a stand-up comic.
Mm-hmm.
He has great use of timing and like dynamics, like vocal inflections. He knows how to be funny. And I said, and he's very profane. Which is, it's hilarious hearing him curse constantly, in the context of anything, like, he could be talking about what they're having for lunch and he's just like, throw a few F-bombs out there. So I said, were you always like this? He said, like in middle school? He goes, yeah, I was always like this. I said, I was so bad. He was like, I was always getting kicked out of class. He said, they want me to send me back for another 7th grade. He said, but then the 7th grade was like, we don't want him. He's like, 7th and 8th grade, we don't want him back. That's Slay. He's a trip.
You have anything else?
I talked to Ben Van Sumeren for a couple of minutes, only because he and N'Kobe are the only linebackers under contract, off-ball linebackers. He really believes he can be a starting linebacker in the league. He thinks it really helped to get a taste of it this year, and he played okay. He played okay for a guy, an undrafted guy who was on the practice squad for most of the year. And that doesn't. Those guys can play now too. So, but he just wants an opportunity next summer, and he's excited about. He's going down to Florida to train for 5 weeks, and then going back to Michigan. And interesting guy. He's a long shot to be a starter, and they got to address the position. Obviously, through free agency, the draft, whatever it takes. But yeah.
Another locker cleanout day in the books.
Yeah, I got to think, so my first full year on the beat was 88, but I was actually started in the middle of 87, like after the player strike, when Phil Sheridan became our columnist. He was covering the team. I became the beat writer. So I did have locker cleanout day in 87. So this is my, 38th? 38th locker cleanout day.
It's a weird day.
It's a lot of clean lockers. Nobody really cleans out their locker, though. They just...
No, a lot of guys do.
Some guys do.
The guys who know they're going to be back don't bother.
Yeah.
If you might not be back.
I might not be back?
No, I'm saying if you, as in
I thought
player.
you were saying, I'm like, getting fired or something.
That's actually why I called you in here today, Rube.
Yeah, it is. It's a weird day. Yeah, you see guys exchanging numbers, and it's emotional for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, it's the last time they'll be around this team, and this team's always gonna, I know they sucked at the end, but those guys are still close. A lot of them.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right. If you enjoyed the Eagle Eye podcast, you know what to do. Please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, click that like button, subscribe there as well. We're on the alert. News happens. We will be ready to talk about it eventually here in the offseason. We'll try to get on a consistent schedule. For now, though, I think it's going to be kind of just wait and see.
Earlier in the day is one thing.
It would be nice. Yeah, we're finishing this at 8:27 p.m., and I'd like to eat some dinner at some point. Any final words?
No, we'll see you soon.
All right. Take care, everyone. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan.